Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is dustinkreis and I have taken a little break, but I'm back now. Took about 10 days off. You decided that I was making way too many YouTube videos and needed to sort of rest and relax a little bit. And of course then when I stopped making YouTube videos, work picked up and I would come home basically a zombie and not feeling like making YouTube videos anyway. So I'm kind of rested and recharged a little bit, and I'm ready to start jumping back into this. And I knew that the game discussion video you guys are all kind of waiting for is 13.2, and about 30 hours through that, I still have a lot of fragments and a lot of pieces of the timeline to unlock. So hopefully by the end of the week, like maybe Sunday, I'll have a game discussion video up for that. Like I said, work is being really busy, and I just come home and sometimes I don't feel like playing. So, but that being said, that's not what we're talking about today. I'm going to do something a little bit different today, and I'm going to talk about a retro game, a sort of undiscovered gem that I think is worth talking about. And we're in a generation now where JRPGs are not at the forefront of everyone's mind. Looking at games that are coming out, it's mostly shooters, Western RPGs, Western developed games. Japanese games are kind of taking a back seat, and I want to talk about this game, one, because I want to kind of bring some JRPGs to people's attention that they might not have looked into, and two, I think this is actually a really good game that got sort of sucker punched by the media and, then by people in general. I think it's a game that kind of didn't get a fair shake and didn't really get taken on its own merits, for a lot of reasons. And that game is Rise Fantasia for the Wii, and it is one of the few traditional JRPGs on the Wii. So that there makes it kind of a, I would think, sort of a sought-after title. If you have a Wii, why don't you have this? If you like JRPGs, why don't you have this? I mean, it's cheap now, and it's actually a really good game. The two main problems with it, because there are problems with it, it's not a perfect game, but the two main problems are, one, the voice acting. You've all heard about the voice acting, and it is bad. But it's bad in sort of a Mystery Science Theater 3000 sort of way, where, at first you're kind of put off by it, but I found that, as I moved through the game, I actually started to enjoy it in sort of a sick and twisted kind of way. Like, it was just fun to listen to because it was, pretty bad. The story is good, it's just how they say the lines is bad. So, there is a good story here. It's just, kind of listening to, like, Nico say his lines or Alf say his lines with just too much, drama in their voice. It's just overly melodramatic. But don't let that, sway you from this game. Because if you don't play a game because of the voice acting, I would ask you to check your gamer badge at the door. It's not the reason why we play these things. It's just sort of an added bonus. There we go. The big problem I have with this game is that it just seems like it doesn't do anything too original. It doesn't really break the mold. It doesn't break any new ground, really. And you can kind of tell that from the cover itself by looking at that logo. I mean, that logo with the name, and then it has the blue symbol behind it. I mean, that's like Final Fantasy right there. You know what I mean? It just it reminds me a lot of those Final Fantasy logos where it's just the name, and then like 7 had the Comet and 8 had Renoa and Squall. But that's kind of indicative of what you're going to get with this game. That being said, while it doesn't do anything new, what it does pretty well. I'm not going to tell you that this is a perfect game that you all should run out and buy, but I'm going to tell you that it's a game that you should think about picking up. It's cheap, and it's good, and it's a JRPG on the Wii, which, now we're getting Xenoblade, and we're getting the last story, or I don't know if we're getting the last story yet. I want to say we are, but there's been no official statement, so I retract that statement. We're getting Xenoblade, and I think we're going to get the last story. But so when those two come out, this is really going to get pushed to the back of the back of the shelf, because it's not a new groundbreaking RPG. It's just a good old-fashioned RPG. So there you go. Anyway, let's break this down as I usually do, and let's talk about the storyline, which there's two reasons why I'm not going to be very specific on the storyline. One is I don't like to spoil things, and two, I beat this game almost a little over a year ago. So the storyline is not too fresh in my head. But when you start the game out, you start as a character called Lark Bright Lagoon, who is our hero. And why they named him Lark instead of Ark, since the game is Rise Fantasia, I don't know. And I really don't understand what the title Rise Fantasia means. It might just be some kind of non sequitur like Final Fantasy was. But anyway, you start off as Lark, who is a mercenary for the Meridian Empire. And he's been charged with fighting these fell dragons that have sort of been ruining the countryside for the Empire. Basically, when you fight these things and they die, they explode, and they release poison that toxifies areas of the ground. So, kind of a big bad thing there. And in fighting these fell dragons, of course, he's knocked off of his airship and knocked into the forest below, where he meets Rifia, who is our sort of secondary heroine, if you will. And Rifia is a diva, or I guess what a diva is she can use magic of song, like she can sing, and it's very magical and it affects the world around her. She is a diva for the opposing empire that the Meridian Empire is fighting. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but you know, if you do a little research, you'll find it. Anyway, I can't remember why Rifia is in this forest. I think it is revealed later in the game. But she's kind of a childlike, innocent character because she's been sequestered from the outside world and doesn't really know how the world works. So, you know, Lark, being Lark, you know, he's kind of a jerk in a lot of ways, you know, talking to people. But he decides to help her, and so their adventure begins. And through this, I mean, you're going to notice a lot of sort of RPG cliches. There's going to be a part of the story where you're going to kind of be reminded of Cecil and sort of what he had to go through in Final Fantasy IV. Of course, by the end of the game, you know, it's this big, we have to fight the gods to sort of determine mankind's destiny so he can gain control of his own destiny, you know, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of little character moments throughout the game between Lark, Rifia, and Lark's best friend Alf, who is the prince of the Meridian Empire, and Adele, who has been Lark's childhood friend, you know, all of his life. So between those four characters, there's actually a really kind of crazy, and it gets very twisted and dark storyline between the four of them. And the story did go some places that I really didn't think it was going to go, because when it starts off very kind of lighthearted, and it is kind of a lighthearted RPG throughout the game. It does take some very dark, twisted turns, but there's one point, I'm not going to talk about it. If you've played it and you know what I'm talking about with those four characters, you know what happens towards the end of the game. But I did not think it was going to go there, and it really surprised me when it did. So, how's that for a cryptic statement? So, does that got your interest piqued? We'll see. But anyway, I found the storyline to be very good. Sort of a typical RPG storyline. So, like I said, it's not going to break any new ground. You're not going to be, like, shocked by it. But you're going to sit back and you're going to enjoy it because, you know, it's kind of like, you know, reading fantasy books in a way. I mean, it's a lot like that. You know, everything after, you know, Lord of the Rings has kind of been inspired by Lord of the Rings and has a lot of the same, you know, cliches and tropes and everything else in it. And, you know, every so often a book will come along like Game of Thrones or Name of the Wind that takes those and kind of skews it a bit. But we really do like to read about heroes who ride off on horses to save the damsel fair. And, you know, in the JRPGs, they have their own sort of story, you know, cliches and tropes that we do like to see, and you will get those in Rise Fantasia, but the story does go in some interesting places. So I would say to you, definitely check it out if you like sort of classical RPG stories, and you can stomach the voice acting, which you can hear on YouTube, of course. It's bad, but it's not going to like shatter your ears. So anyway, let's get into the gameplay a little bit. And in a lot of ways, this game actually reminds me of a Tales game. The way you move through a town, the way you go through the overworld, and the fact that there are skits that you can skip them, but you know, if you're really into JRPGs, why would you? Because you want more of the storyline. And yeah, it really reminds me a lot of the Tales series in that regard. When you get into battles, however, it's got a really kind of cool battle system that takes, of course, a lot of things from different games and kind of melds them all together into a kind of a really cool, addictive battle system. I really enjoyed fighting in this game. I didn't mind grinding, and I actually had a lot of fun with the battle system. And what it is you have 3 characters in your party, with the possibility of a 4th guest character every now and then. And between those 3 characters, you of course have action points that you can divide between the party. So, say for instance, you want to just attack with Lark. You can. You can just have him attack and use up all the action points for the party, and he's the only person that attacks. Or what you should do, of course, is mix the points between the characters to sort of create an awesome battle plan. Because what happens when you pick an action is on the bottom of the screen, kind of like in Final Fantasy X, you have a bar that shows you your actions and the enemy's actions in a timeline. So when you pick an action, like attack, usually the attacks will go before the monster's actions, unless they're quicker than you, of course. Items always seem to be at the front, so whenever you need to heal really fast, make sure you have healing potions and that kind of stuff with you, because the items are almost an instant use, whereas spells take time to cast. So keep that in mind. But anyway, you pick your actions and you sort of slot them in and see, you know, how you want to attack these enemies to get the most out of your action points before the enemy attacks back. Because sometimes these enemies can really decimate you. It's a pretty easy game for the most point, but there are some bosses that you're just going to be like, Jesus Christ, what did I get into? And you really need to pay attention to what you're doing and your party's, you know, health and all that stuff. It really kind of lulls you into a false sense of security to where if you're not really paying attention, you can get chopped pretty easily. Like most RPGs, it has a summon system, and these are in the form of what's called progress. Of course, they're big, flashy attacks that, you know, do massive damage or sometimes will heal up your entire party. And these things are a godsend. In most Final Fantasies, you can get by without using summons. Rise Fantasia, you really need to be strategic in how you use your summons and which summons you use. You really have to sort of take a look, because you can only equip 3 at a time. And there are more, of course there are more than 3, but you can only have 3 actively equipped at a time. And you really need to weigh the pros and the cons of each progress, because they do affect your party a little bit, and their actions are, you know, pretty vastly different. So you really need to take that into account. But the way you summon them is you have a progress bar that slowly refills over time. It actually refills as you take damage, if I remember correctly. And so you really need to pick the most strategic time to use these progress, because it could take a while for that bar to fill back up. Sometimes it'll fill up really fast in boss fights because the bosses are just hammering you. But I feel like my voice is starting to go. But yeah, you really need to be careful with how you use your progress. Another thing about the progress you need to be careful about. There's a certain storyline plot point where you and another character are sort of in a race to acquire as many progress as you can in order to become the child of Issa, which is like that. To explain that would have to go really in depth with the storyline, but the storyline explains it, but I don't want to explain that here. You just play the game. Anyway, it's very important that you acquire as many of these Rogress as you can. I actually think you can acquire almost all of them. There are a few that character starts off with, but I do think you can steal most, if not all of them, from that character and have them in your party, as opposed to vice versa with having him have all these powerful Rogress. So when you get to the point where they start talking about going around and acquiring Rogress, it might be in your best interest to get a guide and make sure you get as many of those as you can. Otherwise, the game might get actually a lot harder. Like, that's what I did. I went around and got all of the Rogress I could, and the end of the game was still pretty hard, but I don't think it was as hard as it could have been. So, other than that, I do believe I remember something about an element system. There is an element system in the game, but I can't really remember off the top of my head quite how it works, but it's the same kind of thing where, you know, fire does more damage to, you know, earth, or, you know, water does more damage to fire, that kind of stuff. But I seem to remember there being something more about it, but it's slipped my head. So just look up about the battle system online, and it'll talk to you about that. Leveling up is a pretty standard thing in this game. You know, your characters level up pretty normally. The one cool thing, though, is your weapons can level up. And they usually have 3 different levels that you go through. And as you level up these weapons, each weapon has sort of a materia system to it. So when you go into a weapon and kind of look at it in the menu, there will be a sort of a grid for that weapon. And underneath, or on the grid, are colored blocks, okay? And they're kind of like Tetris blocks in a way. And as you unlock the weapon, you know, more and more of that grid becomes open for you to sort of put new blocks in to make the weapon stronger. So as you are playing the game, you're going to acquire a lot of weapons, and you are just going to have to sit there and unlock all those weapons. And luckily it happens very quickly, and there are of course items that speed these things up. But you'll want to unlock the weapons to sort of unlock all of these blocks so you can mix and match and make everybody's weapon unique to them and powerful. And it's really a cool system. I really enjoyed it a lot. It's kind of simple, but at the same time it's kind of, you know, it's got a little bit of depth to it. Because you really have to weigh, you know, you might want like an HP plus 1000. Give your character an extra 1000 HP. But that takes up 6 blocks in that grid. And that's a huge chunk of that grid. And you're going to have to weigh having 1000 more HP points versus having all this other cool stuff on your weapon to deal damage. And there are some actual blocks that give you attributes that you really need to have to effectively fight bosses. So you really have to weigh the pros and cons of that. And I thought that was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. Other than that, the graphics and the music. The graphics, they're slightly better than a PS2 game, so go into it with a PS2 game, a really good PS2 game in mind, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the graphics. When the characters talk to each other, of course, it's kind of like Atelier Rorona, where it's basically 2 cartoon-like static characters talking to each other. You know, so that was a little bit of a disappointment. I would much rather have the in-game characters talking to each other, which it's kind of weird because in some cutscenes you get them talking to each other, and in other cutscenes it's the cartoon static characters. So that's a little bit weird. The music, I actually really enjoyed the music. I thought it was all really good. I didn't look into whether or not there's an actual CD to buy for the soundtrack, but I remember while playing it, I actually really enjoyed the music. So. It's a game that I think really got overlooked, and the people that did look into it and played it, I think they kind of gave it a bum rap, because, you know, the voice acting, it is bad. I'm sorry, it's bad, but it's still a really good game, and I really had a good time with it, and I want to make sure I talk about it with you guys and really kind of try to get you guys to have an open mind about it, because like I said, we're kind of in a JRPG drought. That was really hard to say for some reason. And I think, we need to take a look at, every game that's getting released our way, and trying to find some value in it, because otherwise, we're just going to sit around and complain about everything that's coming out, and we won't actually be playing anything. So, I know a lot of you guys, subscribe to me because of RPGs, so I definitely want to make sure you guys don't pass this one up. Like I said, it's not going to set your world on fire. It's not going to drop your jaw, and like Xenoblade probably will, and Last Story will. But it's still a fun adventure to go on, and it's really cheap right now. I think GameStop has it new for $20. So if you can find a used copy, it's probably going to be like 12 or 15. So really no barrier to getting into this game. But give it a shot. You might actually find something in here you really like. I know I did. I really loved the story between Lark and Rifia. I thought Rifia was a really nice character, even though she's kind of a cliche, of course, a very sequestered, quiet person. But definitely give it a shot, guys. It's a good game. So now I'm back. I'm rolling again here, making videos. Like I said, I'm going to have the 13.2 discussion hopefully up by the weekend. As soon as I get done recording this, I'm going to go back and play more 13.2 because I'm really enjoying it, and it's really making me rethink playing 13 again. I kind of want to go back and start 13 from the beginning again and see if I can see it under a new light, because I really think it's really a really good game, guys. I'm serious. I really like it. It's actually getting me excited for Final Fantasy again. Other than that, I got Tactics Ogre on the PSP. Going to be working on that some more. Hotel Dusk on the DS. And then I got a couple more games for a pickups video here soon. So, other than that, I kind of want to do a top 10 TV shows, sort of my 10 favorite TV shows, and talk to you about those. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that or not. But I like to do something different every now and then from games. Just because, everyone's on the internet talking about games. Why not do something a little bit different, kind of cleanse the palate a little bit. But still got my queue up there, so as soon as I get through 13.2 and some other stuff, get back into that. I'm not going to tell you what the next game is. It is kind of a requested game. A lot of people talk to me about playing this game and talking about it because they just want to see what my thoughts are on it, not necessarily to, make them buy it or anything, but they just want to know what I think about it, so that'll be coming up. But yeah, I'm back. And I missed you guys. So leave me a comment. If you've played Rise Fantasia, tell me what you think. Is it a sort of a, in my view, is it a hidden gem, or is it really a bad game to you? And let me know what some of your hidden gems are. Like I really think like Enslaved is a hidden gem. I know a lot of people think Majin and the Forsaken Kingdom is. I haven't got around to playing that yet, but I really want to. I think Blue Dragon is a hidden gem. I think that's a great game. I really had a lot of fun with that. I mean, the story's simple, and there's some bad voice acting in it, but I still really enjoyed it. I don't know, maybe it's just the Akira Toriyama stuff. But there are a lot of hidden gems out there that, a lot of people talk about the AAA titles like Final Fantasy 13-2 and, Skyrim and stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff that slips through the cracks. So I want to know what you guys think about hidden gems and what you guys really like to play that maybe people don't like or know about. I know Okami is like a huge hidden gem. Everyone just goes on and on about Okami. So, but that's it. Yep. So, welcome back, guys. I'm going to try to get back to some momentum here. I don't know if I'll be making a video a day because work is really kicking my ass, but I'm hoping to make a lot more content here, and I will see you guys soon. So take care, and thanks for watching.